you want to live and die in Africa, if you're an African, is a good place to be. But not so much for Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. The International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea will in less than 24 hours settle the disagreement between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire over an area where Ghana is currently undertaking oil exploitation. Ghana headed to the tribunal after it had failed to resolve the matter through diplomatic discussions. Ahead of the special chamber's decision, JoyNews puts the spotlight on the demand each country is making.
The demands by both countries are at sharp variance. Both countries want a declaration, with each unwilling to make a concession. Ghana is asking the chamber to state that Ivory Coast has for years agreed that the area in dispute belongs to Ghana. Agent Gloria Kufu told the chamber in a wrap-up that Ivory Coast was barred from making such a demand due to this admission for decades.
Ghana respectfully requests the special chamber to adjudge and declare that 1. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire have mutually recognized, agreed, and applied an equidistance-based maritime boundary in the territory sea, EEZ, and continental shelf within 200 miles, in accordance with international law, by reason of its representations and upon which Ghana has placed reliance. Cote d'Ivoire is stopped from objecting to the agreed maritime boundary.
The Ivorian delegation sees this request as strange. They consider exploitation in the area as an affront to the rights of the French-speaking country.
To declare and adjudge that the activities undertaken unilaterally by Ghana in the Ivorian maritime area constitute a violation of, firstly, the exclusive sovereign rights of Cote d'Ivoire over its continental shelf as delimited by this chamber.
Adama Togara also wants the chamber to ask the two nations to meet and decide what is due Cote d'Ivoire.
And consequently, A, to invite the parties to carry out negotiations in order to reach agreement on the arrangements for reparations due to Cote d'Ivoire, and B, to state that if they fail to reach an agreement within a period of 6 months, as of the date of the judgment to be delivered by the special chamber, said chamber will determine the amount of this compensation or the arrangements for reparations on the basis of additional written documents dealing with this subject alone.
The Ghana delegation won't have any of this. AG Gloria Kufu requested an outright rejection.
There is no valid reason to depart from a maritime boundary which the parties have both long considered as lawful and equitable in its effects.
On Saturday, all eyes will be on a 5-member chamber presided over by Boalem Bugetea.
Thank you. The session is closed.
So, the case will be closed. For JoyNews, Joseph Akable reporting.
Okay, so now that we're familiar with the demands by each of the countries, why don't we get on to a conversation with a man who is familiar with such stories, well vested also in international law. Here's my conversation with Mr. Sam Okudzeto. The International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea will deliver its judgments on the dispute concerning delimitation of the maritime boundary between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire on September 23, 2017. Ahead of that, I've come to one of Ghana's stalwarts in the Ghanaian law and international law as well. He's also founding partner of Sam Okudzeto and Associate. Mr. Sam Okudzeto also served as chairman of the Ghana-Togo Border Demarcation Commission. It's a pleasure to speak to you, sir.
It's a pleasure.
I wonder what you make of this case. It's been ongoing for a while now, and thankfully judgment is really close.
Well, you can just put it this way and said, there are certain situations we can easily avoid. And you avoid it by doing what is necessary, which in this case was not concluded. And that's part of the problem, in the sense that Ghana was having Ghana-Cote d'Ivoire Border Demarcation Commission, just as much as they have the Ghana-Togo Border Demarcation Commission, and then the Ghana-Burkina Faso Border Demarcation Commission. Those things are necessary for the simple reason that every country should know what its territorial boundaries are. Some countries are lucky. They have, let's say, the sea as a boundary. And there, because there are international treaties which govern the law of the sea, it's easy for them to know that, okay, you have your territorial boundary limit, so and so nautical miles from shore. That one is simple and easy. The rest becomes everybody's free highway, if you like to put it that way. In our case, it was not so, because the boundaries were settled by the colonialist governments, who had previously what you might call scrambled for Africa when they cut bits and pieces, cutting across tribes and linguistic groups. So sometimes you find out that in the case of Cote d'Ivoire, you have enzimas in Cote d'Ivoire, you have enzimas in Ghana. Sometimes even the same families, one here, one there. Sometimes one is a minister in Cote d'Ivoire, another one is a minister in Ghana. You find the same thing in the Ghana-Togo border demarcation, that there are, in fact, I know of instance where the bedroom, the person's head is in Togo and his feet is in Ghana, because we had not laid down rules for building on the boundaries. In some instances, it is the hill that divides the two countries. In some instances, there are rivers or rivulets or streams, which are the international boundary. But you also know that even rivers do change boundaries, because as the seepage occurs, sometimes the river changes its direction. And therefore, when you don't agree as to where the boundary is, it can create confusion. And in the case of Cote d'Ivoire, this is exactly what happened. In fact, it happened in the Togo one. We have not got any dispute yet, but because we did not complete the demarcation process, have it signed, approved by the parliament of the various countries. This was the reason why this problem about Cote d'Ivoire arose.
How is it that we've been able to live peacefully with no disputes, and just when we found oil, this issue cropped up?
Disputes always arise when there is an economic interest involved. It's always the one that triggers, because otherwise it's immaterial. If you have a tribe which is living across there and they come here and they farm here, in fact, there was during my own work as a border commissioner, you find out that there were situations where we were arresting Togolese, allegedly for smuggling cocoa. And then it turns out, in fact, they were even jailed by the court. But then, when I went to the border, I found out that the people were actually 3 kilometers inside Togo. And yet we went and arrested them because the border guard didn't know where the border was. That's an economic interest. Because if not because of cocoa, which we thought was an economic crop and a benefit to Ghana, there would have been no need for those kind of arrests. So this is what happened in Togo, because there was oil. And so now the question is, who owns the oil? Who has the right to provide a concession to those who want to explore the oil? This is the basis for the confusion.
What's your own answer to that?
My own answer was simply because when I was chairman of the Border Commission, eventually the PNDC went and locked me up in Oshaford. Then I heard on the radio that they were appointed a new chairman for the Border Demarcation Commission, where we had not concluded our work. In fact, a lot of the decisions we took had not been implemented. And I was in the prison, I was laughing. I said, these are idiots. Because the person they are appointing to do the work, you have no clue as to what to do. Because there should be a change, there should be proper change. That means I should be able to sit with the new chairman and tell him what work we have done so far, what is left to be done, and how to go about it. But that was not done. And so, in this case also, you find the same thing. That James Mensah was originally the chairman of the Cote d'Ivoire Border Commission when I was for the Ghana one. He died, somebody else took over. But they did not complete the work that should have been done. So successive governments come, they lack the, what you might call it, the decisive nature to take a decision and say, this is important. That don't just say that we are living at peace. Oh, we are neighbors. It doesn't work like that. When it comes to economic interests, there are no neighbors.
Is it too late for us to set up another commission and complete this work?
No, it is not that it is too late. It has to be done in any case. It must be done. Because now you found out, well, this was in the sea. That's why you went to the tribunal. But next time it may be inland.
Would the tribunal's decision matter in terms of whether we set up a commission to finish this work or not?
Oh, no. There will be no relationship between the two issues. Because as I'm saying, this particular one was because it was a maritime dispute in the sense that the oil exploration is taking place in the ocean, in the sea. But this issue could still arise in future if oil is discovered inland. You are aware, for example, that it's been suggested that there's a lot of oil in the Volta region. That one is not on the ocean, it's inland. And so if we don't complete your border commission, that situation can easily still arise in relation to this matter. So it is important.
It's amazing. If this is so important, it's amazing why we've left it hanging all these years.
Well, as you know, we have had this unfortunate situation of governments coming and sometimes the military intervenes, then a civilian comes and they are preoccupied with certain things that they don't think others are important. But to me, these are such important issues.
Considering we even spent a lot of money on this particular
Exactly.
case. So much.
It's a lot of money that you spend upon it. That is the more reason why it is important that as neighbors, in fact, the, what do we call it? The amazing part was that the border commission, that the Ghana Togo Border Communication, was actually set up by Ashampong. That was a military regime that actually set it up. And the civilians should have continued it to make sure that it is concluded, signed, and ratified by the parliaments of both countries, with all the maps and everything else. Because I tell you, to do that work, the French had to be getting maps from France. And we had to be getting some of them from Germany. Because you are aware that Togo was indeed a German colony. And that it was after the First World War that it was divided between the two countries. So you need the old maps to see what was the colonial power themselves agree upon and to use that as a basis for settling the border.
And those maps, did you get hold of them at least when you were handling?
Sure, yeah. In fact, we couldn't do without the maps. The survey was very important. We got a very good surveyor who was with us. Well, he was the leader of the Soviet team. So those are very important because the historical documentation is very important on a matter of that nature. And of course, understanding the legal context also becomes very important.
What should we expect with this Ghana-Cote d'Ivoire issue? Because it could go anyway.
That is very true. I know the Ghanaians are so sure, but perhaps maybe the Cote d'Ivoire people are also sure. I'm not so sure what it is.
But you followed the defense that we put up.
Yes, I did. Of course I did follow it. I followed it up. It's of interest to all of us.
Is it strong enough?
Well,
Did we make a good case
I believe so. I believe it was a very good case presented because I have to do the law of the sea also as part of my master's program. So I am very conversant with these issues as they are. So the question will be, but then we always say that law is not mathematics. And so you can be so sure on the issue you have raised, only to find out that the tribunal thinks otherwise. So our hope and prayer is that by the weekend, we will be sure as to where it lies.
But let's weigh the two sides. What would it mean if we lost this case?
Because we have given concessions for exploration, which were within the area which is being disputed. It means that if we do that, it means that all those concessions we've given now becomes illegal, null and void. And that's a loss. Don't also forget that there is a more economic interest in the sense that we now believe that we are oil exploration country, and here we are losing maybe a large chunk of oil, which could have brought revenue to the country. So that is serious for us.
And if we were to win?
If we were to win, of course, there will be jubilation as usual. We will jubilate that we were right after all, that the concessions we were granting, we had every legal right to grant them before granting it. But it does not make us cease to have Côte d'Ivoire as our neighbor and friend, because we did not want it to become like a war between two countries. And this is the more reason why we went to a neutral body to decide, which is the tribunal that we have gone into.
Would the decision, if we were to win, would it at least do a bit of the work of the Demarcation Commission? Would it, in terms of the legalities of it, would it be clear where our boundary ends?
No, far from it. Because we are only now talking about the sea, the land and the sea. But you can find out that there are thousands of miles from that area right to the north, where we join with Côte d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso. So all that needed to be clarified and completed. A lot of work was done, I'm aware of it, but it has not been concluded. And so there's still a lot of work that needed to be done. And even what is being done needed to be completed and codified and ratified.
So after this judgment, how soon would you say we should pick up from where we left off?
In fact, I believe that we should actually pick it up now. We should immediately after it is concluded and judgment is given, we should sit with Côte d'Ivoire, reappoint the Border Commission, and make sure that they complete the work that was previously done. I hope, of course, that there is proper archiving of the results of that, because that is one thing I know Ghana is always lacking, that we don't have proper document keeping of records. I remember the stadium probe, which I did after Kufuor came into office, a few months after Kufuor. And years later, I found people coming to my office and asking me for copies of the report. And I said, what do you mean? I prepared so many copies of this document which we presented to the government. And by law, these documents are supposed to be kept in certain places, including the National Archives. So, Sports Council should have copies in the archive. Foreign Affairs, all of them should have documents in the archive. What happened? So look, we Ghanaians are very bad at complying with the law and making sure that documents are properly kept and preserved for posterity.
Would the decision for or against hurt our relationship with Côte d'Ivoire?
It should not. It should not, for the simple reason that being a lawyer, we go to court to litigate. We litigate because we want a clarity on an issue. But there's no reason why, because somebody won a case or lost a case, there should be enmity between them. No, they are our neighbors and they are our friends. As I said, when you go through the border, it's only then you begin to see that you travel from one village and cross the border to another village, and you find the same people across. So what is the purpose for misunderstanding and fighting? It makes no sense.
Should we be sharing? Should we win? And I know that lots of Ghanaians are positive on this. Should we still be giving something to Côte d'Ivoire? Should they even lose this case?
Well, that is not a normal process in the sense that when we were given the concession, we weren't giving it because we wanted to share the proceeds with anybody. It's potluck, if I have to put it that way, in the sense that I may have oil, you may not have. But I know that they also have. They also have oil. Maybe not in the same quantity as we have. But that's how life is all about. So it is not a question of sharing the proceeds of anything like that, unless there is not a certainty in the decision, which of course is most unlikely. If there is not a certainty, it's only then that you can say, okay, since there is no certainty, maybe perhaps let's sit down and see what each person takes. But in this case, I do not believe that that is the outcome of it.
Using Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire as a cue, should we expect anything to come from Togo anytime?
Well, I am praying and advocating. In fact, I didn't have time to talk to the president. But it's one thing that I think that it is important for them to try and complete that work, just in case that there may be oil in the sea over there as well. Because when you look at the topography of the areas, and you compare it to, let's say, the topography in the delta area of Nigeria, you can see it's quite similar, which means that there is a possibility that there may be oil on land, there may be oil in the sea. And so it is better that we actually conclude our relationship and not wait until something happens and then it becomes a misunderstanding.
All right, so that's my conversation with Mr. Sam Okudzeto, who is very familiar with this particular subjects, being in charge of the Boundary Demarcation Commission one time, the Ghana-Togo boundary, and then he says there are a lot of Roland, there are a lot of boundary issues that we have to deal with, and he thinks it must be now. Like we have to, as soon as this decision is made, whether it goes for Ghana or Ivory Coast, we have to begin to work on the other boundary issues because they could just come back and haunt us, just like this one is. This one is not friendship matter.
No, not at all. And I believe that on the other side of the divide, Togo too, we have to take a look at it, and as well as Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that
But
because you know we have some oil.
Yeah.
Or I told that we have some oil discoveries around those areas, or some deposits.
Yeah, and knowing that is all these economic gains that bring about
Some of these disputes.
Otherwise, we're all peaceful.
We were peaceful until oil came.
Yeah. Somebody's head is in Ivory Coast, his legs are in Ghana.
But we also need to give some education to the public that the way the boundaries, as far as the sea is calculated, is not just with the normal man's eye. It's not with a landmark and etc.
Yeah.
They have two types. So.
Yeah, I think Mr. Okudzeto also shared some real experiences of arrest that they made when he was working with the commission, with the Ghana-Togo demarcation. Later on, they would find that really where the people were that they arrested them was not even part of Ghana after all. You know, so yeah, they are real issue. But one of the things that he says, which is really critical, is also the fact that we don't seem to have those the data, the work that people have done on these places, because you know there was another commission in charge of the Ghana Ivory Coast boundary, and the fear is we may not
have the data available. No,
we may not. And he uses the experience. Sorry, he uses the experience because you know that he was also chairman
of that commission,
of that. Yeah, but apart from that, the May 9 disaster. The May 9 disaster. And then he said, after many years, with all the records that he made to the various destinations,
he said he has his copy.
They come back to him and they ask him, and he's like, really? But we've got an archiving system. We have a whole national archive, whatever it is, and you still come back to me. So that's the fear, because then it means that you have to go back, you have to look for the old maps, what the colonial masters used, if you want to really settle these issues. And that's the fear. Yeah.
Well, we hope that we will come to, but we'll get to know tomorrow. And
yeah, we'll get to know tomorrow. And the dial to be on really is JoyNews. JoyNews. And thankfully, it will be at the time when Samson Ladiayenini will be here. So listen, we're going to be breaking down all the issues for you. And we will tell you in real time what the decision is.